Yeah.
Okay. Hi all. So I'm very proud and it's a warm welcome, Deepa.
Oh, hi
And
guys.
yeah, hi, hi. So Deepa is a doctor. She has a she's specialty registrar, general adult psychiatry, working in Macclesfield District General Hospital, UK. She's experienced in adult psychiatry, old age psychiatry, child and adolescent, Laotian psychiatry, forensic psychiatry. The others I don't even know how to address this. Completed her cognitive behavior therapy in shared case. Completed psychodynamic psychotherapy with long case. So, Deepa, a very warm welcome to you, and thanks for your time to come and join us and to give all these the wonderful infos that you're trying to share with us. Thanks,
All
thanks.
right. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you, Brinda.
Over to you, Deepa, so you can carry.
Yeah, sure. So the rest of the people are put in silent, right? I can
Yes,
start
I'll
now.
do that. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Just give me a minute. Yeah, Deepa, you alone unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I did. Yeah, yeah.
So
hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Deepa. You can go ahead.
All right, guys. Okay. So the topic we're going to discuss today is about psychiatry in early childhood, right? Okay. So Brinda, can you open with the subtitle slide, please?
Definitely.
Because I'm not able to see the slide here. Yeah.
No, I'm doing it
on
right
my screen.
Now. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Right. Okay. Brinda, you can put it as a slideshow.
There is no option called slideshow for me here. So as you tell, I'll click on the slides and keep going. Deepa, unmute yourself, Deepa.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Done.
Right, guys. Okay. So the topic we're going to discuss today is I'm going to give a bit of introduction about the psychological aspect of for a child, and then going to touch about the common early psychiatric disorders in children, right? And we're going to discuss about the causes, what are the treatment options, and some parental guidelines and the take-home message. So this psychiatry in early childhood is a very, very vast area to cover. So it is highly difficult for me to condense everything and speak everything in 1 hour. So what I have done is that I have included the most common psychiatric disorders, yeah, and we'll give a bit of background of what to expect when a child is unwell and what are the steps that parents have to take, and also few take-home messages, right? Okay. Before we move on, if you could go into the next slide, Brinda. Right, okay. The next slide, I've just put up this question, okay. So I'm talking about mental health, yeah. I wanted to ask, like, you guys, like, why do we need this topic? Why do we need to talk about mental health as an issue and discuss here? Why do we need that? You can unmute and tell me.
It's a question.
Why do we need this? Why do we need this topic? Why do we need to discuss all this mental health? Why?
It's a question. If anyone would like to answer.
So ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't have my camera on for now. I'll turn it on.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking, our minds and our bodies, there are, a lot of similarities. So just like we take care of our bodies, we need to take care of our minds. So, and just like our bodies do get hurt, get tired, in the same way, same thing happens to our minds. So just like we take care of our physical health, we need to take care of our mental health. I'm just drawing
Very good, sir. Very good. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Very good. So the purpose is to be happy, right? Okay, good. Okay, fine. So for young children, this mental health is so important because children cannot express themselves that, I feel sad and I feel low today and I'm getting negative thoughts. They cannot express. So what you see in a child is that change in their behavior. The child could be isolating themselves, child could be withdrawn, and child is like, could present with low energy levels, not engaging in their usual activities, what they used to do. So you could encounter such behavior changes emotional difficulties. They could be getting angry, they could be irritable, or they could be, sad, withdrawn, not eating, not sleeping. So those are the emotional difficulties. So next slide, Brinda. So the purpose of the mental health, why it is so important in a child is this, okay? So behavior difficulties, emotional difficulties will happen, and all this is so important because any challenge to the child mental health impacts their developmental milestones. So young children often emerge as a failure to achieve their developmental milestones. So child is born, the nature gifted the child to us, the child is born, then the child, gets the head control, and then it starts, sitting up, and then crawling stage, then walking stage, and then this language development where they start speaking few words, then make a sentence, then this full-fledged intellectual speech happens. All this sort of language, cognitive development, and the motor skill, they all get affected when the child mental health suffers, right? This is why mental health is so important for a child. So next slide, Brinda. Right, okay. So I put up this one as conventional stages of early development, right, okay. Both in child psychiatry as well as in pediatric, we divide with different stages to assess the cognitive as well as the language and the motor skills of children, right, okay. So starting from the perinatal period. So I'm giving a bit of background and understanding about different stages, how we classify them, and how each stage is so important for your human being psychosocial development, right? Okay. Starting with the perinatal period. So what is perinatal period? Is a time when the egg gets implanted in the uterus, the time of conception until the time the child is born. We call that as a perinatal period, right? Right from the time that the egg gets implanted in the uterus, right from the time a child developing in mother's womb, from that time the child prepares itself for the outside world. Example, when the child is born, it sucks breast milk. So that sucking reflex happens inside mother's womb. And also other things like, the child, moves its body, movement, and few other reflexes we call like extension of arms and legs. All this happens inside mother's womb. So right from that time itself, the child purpose of birth is to prepare itself for the outside world where it's going to live. Right, okay. So this is what perinatal period is so important. So next comes the infant period where the child is born up until age 1. Then you call it as a toddler period, which is like 1 to 2.5 years. Then comes the preschool period, which is 2.5 to 6 years, right, okay. Then it goes on like that, 6 to 12 years, 11 to 14, 14 to 17, 17 to 20. So from 11 till 20 years, you call that as an adolescent period. After adolescence, we all here, we enter into adulthood. You and me, everybody, okay? Even in adulthood, the psychosocial development happens, right? So age 20 to 40, you call it as early adulthood, where we try to finish our exams, try to find a job, settle ourselves in life, and get married, get into a relationship where a new person come in our life. We try to adjust to things around. Then you become a parent, mother and father, and learn from the child and adjust to the child's needs. And then comes the late period of retirement. So it goes on like that. So the psychosocial development happens all throughout life for a human being, right? Okay. So why the stage is divided? Why a pediatrician and child psychiatrists are dividing this and talking about it? Why? Because, see, this period of 0 to 6 years is crucial, very crucial for a child, because any global impact or any sort of, trauma to the child mental health between this stage, 0 to 6 years, it gives like kind of, a tremendous impact to overall psychosocial development. So child's motor teenagers during the 0 to 6 years. So 0 to 6 years is so crucial for overall psychological development, rest of the life up until age 65 and above. So this period is so crucial, so important on that aspect. So that's why I put up this slide just to give our information that, like, there are different stages and we all mature psychologically as we progress in our life. For children, 0 to 6 years is crucial and very important. So child needs love during this period. Right, okay. So next slide, Brinda. Right, okay. So what do children do? Right. Children are born into this world. So the nature brought the child, and then comes the nurture, the environment where the child goes, where the parents, teachers, and the society contribute so much for the child for its psychosocial development, right? So the child is an active participant in all this, and psychologists call the child as an inquiring scientist. So what does inquiring scientist means? That is this. So they experiment with objects and events around them. Example, when an infant is crawling, when it reaches a crawling stage, so it experiments how long does it need to crawl to reach an object. So that's what inquiring scientist means. They experiment with things around. Example, a toddler. So you keep a glass of water at the edge of the table and the toddler pushes it outside. So the glass breaks and the water falls down. So what does the child did? The child is experimenting. So what will happen if I push the glass at the edge of the table? So what will happen? So the glass falls, the water falls, and the glass breaks. So this is what the child does. They experiment with the objects, with the events around them. So they are called as inquiring scientists. Not only that, they discover relationship. They learn from people around how they behave, and they pick up all the clues and all the basic manners. Everything is learned. So they discover relationship and learn from people around. The next comes this adolescence phase, which I mentioned on my previous slide, up until age 17 years. So what happens at the adolescent stage is that when a child enters the adolescent stage, the child asks itself the question, right, like who I am, what I am doing, where I'm going to go. So psychologically, they call this as the, identity crisis and also identification. They try to identify themselves. So they explore various behavior, explore various interests, ideology, they involve in relationship. So all these are part of a healthy psychosocial development. So this slide where it shows being an active participant, inquiring scientist, discovering relationship and that identity development, these are all the normal psychosocial development for a child. Right, okay. So next slide, Brinda. Right, okay. So this is what it is. Right, okay. So bit of background which I have given so far about the child psychology, just to give an idea about what are the different stages, what is that infancy, adolescence and adulthood stages. Now, coming to the actual topic, okay. So we're going to talk about early childhood psychiatric disorders, okay. So I'm going to cover today about mood disorders. Mood disorder includes depression, bipolar illness. Then we're going to talk about anxiety disorders, okay. Anxiety disorder is generalized anxiety disorder. And also I'm going to talk about a few phobias which are common in early childhood, like agoraphobia, social phobia. Then we're going to touch about what is panic disorder. So you could have seen like commonly people coming out with these terms like, being depressed, suffering from bipolar, a child suffering from anxiety, having some particular phobia or experiencing panic attack. So we're going to learn about what are they, right? I won't be talking too much theory, but we'll give a just sort of, an understanding, simple understanding of what to expect on each these, mental health issues, right? Okay. topics about obsessive compulsive, schizophrenia, and then ADHD, oppositional defiant, and what is conduct disorder. So all these terms might look complex to you, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible. Right, okay.
Change to next slide.
Yeah, please, Brinda, change to next slide. Okay. So now the first one is mood disorder. So mood disorder, as I mentioned before, we're going to talk about depression and then bipolar, right? Okay. So what this mood disorder is this, right? Okay, see, suffering from diabetes, you call it as a disease. If you suffer from a stroke, you call that as a disease. And any sort of cardiac issue, cancer, we call those as disease. Whereas mood disorder, you call them as syndromes. So what is syndrome? A child or a patient is brought to a psychiatrist, right? Okay. And they come with certain problems and they explain. For example, for a child, the history will be mostly given by the primary caregiver, mother, or sometimes we obtain the history from teachers. So they bring the child and say that, like, you know, my child is not normal. She is quite withdrawn. She is being sad and you know, anxious, isolating herself. So whatever the history, the information, the child, the patient, or the primary caregivers give to you, you call that as a symptom. Okay, symptom is what the patient tell to a doctor. Then there is this mental health professional on the other hand, examining the child, doing the necessary investigations, and then coming to a collection of a set of issues which they have assessed from the child. So you call that as a sign. So sign is what the mental health professional elicits from the patient. So overall, mood disorder is considered as a cluster combination of the symptom, what the patient says, and the sign, what the doctor elicits. So you call them as a syndrome. Okay. So mood disorder doesn't happen just one day and you take the child to the doctor and tell there is a problem. The doctor would say, no, it's normal. No, it happens in a periodical or a cyclical manner. So lasting for quite few days to weeks and then reoccurring again after a couple of weeks. And then it goes on like a cyclical pattern, right? Okay. So this is what happens in mood disorder, right? So you and me, we all experience, like, you know, ups and downs, right? One day we will be feeling quite low and lack of energy, and there might be some like, you know, trauma happening around. We might be traumatized, and we do cry. We all cry, and there might be some pleasant things happening, and we will be very happy, you know, feeling like, you know, extreme happiness, and you will be enjoying. So all this, like, you know, feeling low and then, you know, being normal and feeling happy, all these things happens. But these wide range of moods, whatever is happening within us, we will have the control of it. So when we feel low, when we cry, we shed tears, and then after, like, you know, a day or so, we come back and touch that normality, right? Again, if happiness comes, we achieved something or a great success happens, and we feel very happy, and then we come back and touch that normality after a couple of days. So what happens in mood disorder is this sense of control. Coming back and touching that normality, normal line is lost. So not only that, so the patient experience subjective distress, great distress of all this happening around. So when they strike low, they go extreme down that they cannot pull themselves back and come back to that normal line. And on the other extreme, when they are happy, they are over the moon, very full of energy, excited, you know, and, you know, overspending and, you know, like doing so much work, and they cannot pull themselves and come back to this normal line. So this is what happens. The sense of control is lost, and the patient experience, subjectively, they experience great distress that, you know, like, you know, they couldn't pull themselves back to normal. So when they feel low, they even get negative thoughts about ending their life, which they cannot take control of it. So this is what happens in mood disorder. So the take-home message is this one line: sense of control is lost for the patient. They cannot control their their mood swings, and they cannot bring back things to normal. So that's what happens in mood disorder. Okay, next slide. Okay, so very first common thing we all encounter is this depression. So commonly everybody says that, you know, I feel depressed, I feel low. So what is this depression? What is this? Is this okay? So what the slide you guys are seeing in front of you is the textbook symptoms, right? What the doctor diagnoses, right? And also what the patients commonly present and tell to a doctor. Okay, fine. So I will explain what it is, and then next slide I will tell you how a child presents. So you need to have an understanding about what depression is actually means, and then for child how how difficult it is to express, you know, extract those symptoms, right? Okay. So depression is this, okay, feeling of low mood, feeling low, which is present most of the day, almost every day, okay, and present for at least a duration of about 2 weeks, consistently feeling low, and which is not influenced by any external factors, right? There is no any particular external factor which is the reason for them to feel low. No, they feel low, uninfluenced, unaffected by any external factors, and this low mood is consistent and present almost every day for a period of about 2 weeks, right? And then loss of interest, right? They don't enjoy things they used to do before. Example, an artist does not enjoy what he was doing before. They stop having the little pressures, whatever happened before. So they lose interest in things, even including personal hygiene. They don't bother taking a shower, looking after themselves. General loss of interest in everything around them happens. Now, another one is decreased energy. Extreme low energy happens. So there is a proven biological factor for this. So they feel very, very, very low in energy, and extreme tiredness, increased fatigue. They cannot do any work. They just lie on the bed. And mainly because lack of energy, they don't have much energy. So not only this, like, you know, they lose their self-confidence. They cannot concentrate. So children cannot concentrate on what is being taught in the school. And also, like, you know, they get negative thoughts about ending their life or cutting themselves, self-harming. So on adding above, they also present with problems with sleep. So sleep could be two things: either lack of sleep or extreme sleep, and also appetite. Either, you know, like they might not feel hungry, or they eat a lot and they gain weight. So both the aspect happens with depression. So this is what the textbook says, and this is what we use to diagnose a patient, both child, adolescence, and adulthood. We use this to diagnose depression. Now, next slide. Right, okay. So what are the key points for the child is this, right? Okay, the child cannot express themselves. They will not come to you and they will tell you, like, you know, doctor, I feel very low. I don't have interest in things around. My energy levels are low. They cannot say that. They cannot express themselves. Even the school-age child, it's very difficult. Even an adult patient to describe how they feel about their mental health is very hard. So it's mainly in the hands of the mental health professionals, as well as the primary caregivers and teachers who pick up these clues to diagnose, right? Okay. So what happens is that the history is mostly given by the parents, who are the primary caregivers, so who bring the child to you and who tell you that, like, you know, my child is not normal. My child is quite withdrawn, isolating, neglecting herself, not enjoying what she used to do before. So the history is mostly given by the parents and also by the teachers who have observed the child while the child is at school, right? Okay. So commonly what they say, school-age children, they tell, like, you know, they feel very sad. and also sometimes they can say that like, they are not normal. They feel sad, they feel low, they cannot concentrate, and also academically, you could see their grades like, decline in their school functioning because of difficulty in concentration and lack of interest. So all this happens because all this things is usually given, the history is given by the primary caregiver. So any change in their usual behavior is a key point to remember for a child. So this one I said like about the depression symptoms. Now for the depression, one more important thing I put it as a separate slide is this somatic syndrome, right? Okay. So see, apart from whatever I said, like feeling low, loss of interest, lack of energy, and difficulty in concentration, other than that, there is one more important sign to be noticed is this somatic syndrome. So this is more common in depression, anxiety, especially in school-age children. Okay, right. Okay, what is somatic syndrome is this, right? See, school-age children, they present to you with the unexplained physical health issues. So that could be anything, pain over the body, any pain in their tummy, or presenting with a headache. So that would be the only sign they come to you and tell you like, the parents bring the child to a physician, not to a psychiatrist, to a physician, and tell them that like, the child is having repeated pain in the tummy. And sometimes they might get a call from the school, and the teacher call the parents and say that like, your child is not well, please can you take them home? And the child will present with genuine physical symptoms like some pain in tummy or in their head, or pain anywhere in the body. So what happens, they go to a physician and they check the child and they do the examination and the necessary physical investigations. So all this will be done and they cannot find a conclusive evidence of what is wrong. They cannot give a diagnosis because the investigations will be normal, the examination will be inconclusive. So what happens during that time is that there will be increased distress on the patient side from the parents, especially because parents want an answer. So what is happening with my child? Why my child is suffering? And again, they seek repeated reassurance. They go to different doctors and ask them what is wrong. They might not be happy with whatever the answers they are getting. All they're looking is for a diagnosis. What is happening with my child? So that time, please keep in mind that it could be mental health, right? Okay. So school-age children, they usually present with somatic symptoms, physical symptoms like pain in their tummy or anywhere in the body without other signs, whatever I listed on the previous slide, which goes with depression. So any such unexplained physical health issues, have a clue that it could be mental health and take them to a mental health professional, right? So what all things happens is this. The key point is, remember, depression and anxiety disorder can present with these somatic symptoms in children, right? Okay, so there is an example I would like to share, right? Okay, so this is a 8-year-old child and who does very well academically. And so the child was one day mom got a call from the school saying that like, the child is vomiting continuously. So the child reported that she is having headache. So they mom took the child to a general physician, and they even did a CT head for the child. They cannot find an answer why the child is having the headache. And again, ultrasound abdomen was done for vomiting, inconclusive. They cannot come into any diagnosis, right? Okay. Then comes the point where we explore the history, right? Okay. So the child lives with mom and dad. So dad got a new job and he left the home and he visits only during the weekends. He comes home during the weekends and he leaves on Sunday evening. So what happens during Monday to Friday? So the child was missing her father. So that was a thing which was impacting, and the child was feeling low and anxious. So this is what happens. So you need to look into the somatic symptoms. When you cannot find an answer physically, if everything is wrong, think about mental health. okay so far?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So this is what depression is about. So we're going to go into the next topic of anxiety. Yeah. So only the key thing to remember, as I told you, is that any change in your child behavior, keep in mind, and also keep in mind about this somatic syndrome I just spoke about, right? Okay. So let's move on to the next one. Is this anxiety disorder? Okay. So this is also again most prevalent psychiatric disorder in children as well as in adolescents up until age 20, right? Okay. So before I touch the anxiety, I want somebody to answer me these things, right? Okay. There are these two words, anxiety and fear. Yeah. So what is the difference, or how do you define anxiety? How do you define fear? Or what is the difference between these two words? Can somebody answer?
I think, am I audible?
Yeah, audible, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I think once you see that there is nothing to be afraid of, then your fear is gone. I think, and anxiety is like you're always excited about something without even seeing what it is of.
All right, very good, very good. That's exactly what it is. Then the next slide, if you go. Yeah. This is the one, right? Okay. So what is anxiety? What is fear? Is this okay? Anxiety is an alerting signal. So it warns you some impending danger is going to happen, but this response to this threat is unknown. You do not know what is triggering this anxiety, and anxiety is something which is happening internally inside you, and it is conflictual. You cannot come into agreement why that is happening to you. Whereas fear is also similar alerting signal, but it is something which is coming externally, and it is non-conflictual threat. Like, you are in agreement with it. You know why you have that fear. Example, a snake approach you. We get scared. We know that, this is what I'm scared of. So fear is external. Fear is external, and you know the threat, what is happening, the fear. Whereas anxiety is sort of a feeling of impending danger, which is happening internally, inside yourself, and you cannot come in terms with it, why it is happening. So this is the difference between anxiety and fear. And most important difference is this, right? Fear happens all of a sudden, whereas anxiety is insidious. It means it happens gradually and it is quite harmful. Whereas fear happens just sudden and then it goes. So that is the difference between anxiety and fear. Okay. So what is this anxiety disorder? Again, as I explained what anxiety is. So anxiety disorder is a free-floating anxiety, which is present all the time. It is generalized, it is persistent, it is present all the time. What is that? It is a prominent tension. You feel tensed all the time. You worry about it. And in this particular thing, generalized anxiety disorder, the symptoms could go for 6 months and so on. So that is what it is. So prominent tension and worry and free-floating anxiety present all the time. And what do the patients experience? So what is it? Is this? They feel nervousness. They will be shaking. They will be sweating. They will have this tension all the time and palpitation. So what is palpitation? Is that pounding heart rate. So their heart rate keeps increasing and they feel dizzy. Not just that, not all this sort of nervousness, sweating, not just these symptoms, but they also experience somatic symptoms. So as I mentioned before, those somatic symptoms like physical pain in their body. So just like that, they will have some epigastric discomfort, like pain in their tummy. They might have some headache, and they feel like, very urgent to urinate and defecate. So all these things happens with generalized anxiety disorder, right? Okay. So this is what, again, a child, it's very difficult for a child to tell all this, but you could see the child suffering, being very tensed, other external symptoms like, nervousness, sweating, shaking, and the child could say like, my heart is beating fast. So those clues you can pick it up. So this is what generalized anxiety disorder. So most important thing to remember in this anxiety disorder is that, as I said before, it is not related to any particular environmental circumstances. No particular trigger that this is why I'm experiencing, because this is anxiety, this is not fear. So not related to any particular environmental circumstances. And one other thing to remember is, remember the somatic symptoms as I mentioned before, right? Okay. So since I gave this definition between anxiety and fear, so I'm going to talk about these two topics, okay? So two phobia, okay? One is agoraphobia. So next slide, Brinda. Okay, agoraphobia. And then only two phobia I'm covering because we don't have time to cover everything, okay? So common two phobia, agoraphobia, and then what is social phobia, right? Okay. So what is agoraphobia? Consistent fear in crowded or the public places. So when a child or a patient wants to travel away from their usual comfortable environment, traveling alone, traveling away from home, they experience extreme fear. They are very scared and they sweat, they start to shake, and they will have chest pain, they will have difficulty in breathing, pain in their tummy, and even other symptoms like fainting episodes could happen. So this is what happens. So phobia is a fear, consistent fear they experience when they leave from their comfortable zone and then they travel away from their home, or they travel in a crowded environment. You call that as agoraphobia. Right, okay. Not just this, they will also experience other symptoms that, like, they feel unreal. The objects are unreal. The objects are, not related to them. And the people around are not related to them. They feel detached. They feel that, like, they feel unreal. They feel like they are not normal. So this is what we call it as derealization or depersonalization. So this is what happens with agoraphobia. So next slide, Brinda. So next we go into social phobia. So this agoraphobia, social phobia are quite common in childhood, right? Okay, social phobia. What is social phobia is that marked fear of being a focus of attention. So the child will have extreme fear and experience so many symptoms when you ask a child to talk in front of crowded people, or when you take the child to a birthday party or any social gatherings, when the child feels, or when the child is being put as a focus of attention in front of people, they have immense fear. And they don't like that, being a focus of attention. So what the child will do, the child tries to avoid those circumstances. Example, speaking in front of school people, the child would say, like, I'm not feeling well, I don't want to go to school. Some other, she will bring up some other symptoms and try to avoid that particular situation, because they think, the child thinks, or any patient will think, avoiding will make them feel better. It's the other way around. So the child has to expose itself to those circumstances to function better, right? So this is social phobia. So not only like, being a focus of attention, even eating in public, in front of crowded people, even eating food or entering into any party, or, entering into a classroom, they feel this immense fear. So again, similar to agoraphobia, they feel all those physical symptoms, like, when you ask them to present your topic in front of school people, the child will be blushing, shaking, they cannot talk, their mind gets blocked, they cannot think, they cannot process, and they will experience physical symptoms like pain in the tummy and vomiting. So this is what happens in social phobia. So agoraphobia, social phobia, the common phobias you'll encounter. There are quite a lot which I'm not covering because we don't have time, okay? So the next one we going is this panic disorder. So this is again quite common, even for adults. We used to say commonly that, like, I'm experiencing panic attack. So what is this? Now, we're going to focus on this word, anxiety, right? So phobia, we are using the word fear. Panic disorder, we are using the word anxiety. Okay, what is this panic disorder? Recurrent attack of severe anxiety, okay, which are not restricted to any particular situation or any particular circumstances. So there is no external factors which plays a role. It just happens spontaneously without any particular trigger. The patient will feel breathless, feel like choking, chest pain, sweating, shaking, they can't breathe. So this is what happens all of a sudden, and it's very quite unpredictable, starts abruptly. It lasts for a few minutes and then it disappears, right? This is what panic disorder is. That the worst thing is that they feel that they're going to die. So that even triggers the symptoms more, and it goes as a vicious cycle. So they present with a physical symptom like chest pain, difficulty in breathing. Then you do the necessary investigation, you rule out physical, and then you think like, no, it is mental health. So this is what panic disorder is. So panic disorder is also quite common, but make sure you rule out physical health before diagnosing or before thinking about mental health, right? Okay. The next topic is this obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay, what is this obsession? Right, okay. Actually, I wanted to ask a question, but the slide came up, sorry. So can somebody say, from your point of view, what do you think is this disorder means? Because this is also quite common term used in public.
You're asking about OCD or panic disorder?
No, I'm talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. So stay there itself, Brinda. Stay there itself, panic disorder itself.
Okay, right.
Okay. Yeah. Can somebody tell me, like, from your point, what do you think obsessive compulsive disorder? Because it's quite commonly people use it. We see it in movies and, friends around, they all say, I'm quite obsessed. I have OCD. So what is this OCD?
So ma'am, for some it can be about cleanliness, that they feel like, that they're, as like these are particular behaviors, if it has to do with cleanliness, about order, about how things should be, and that, so they have these requirements, that they have a certain value or a certain expectation.
Can you speak a bit louder, sir? Bit louder, please. Bit louder.
Okay. I'm coming up with examples where it's behavior, basically repetitive behavior that has to conform to their expectation or to a value, like cleanliness, about order, about punctuality or certain, principles like that, so they are really fixated about it. And it comes to the point where it can hamper their, normal living.
Well done. Very good.
Exactly. So Deepa, can I just add on to one thing? Thing that I had observed in our classroom, and it has been a huge debate last month. Okay, there is a very thin line between obsession and the perfection that we talk about. Correct. So when in a Montessori environment, we always talk about perfection, and the perfection coming from within the child or within the person itself. So we had also seen that
personality. Yeah.
Correct. And we have also seen that the line is very so thinly drawn that the minute the child goes on the other side, it actually becomes an obsession rather than a perfection. Okay. Aiming to perfection is different. Going for obsession is different. So there was a child who was continuously repeating things, which happened a little longer before. And we brought that topic again back, where the child wanted to do the activity again and again. And she cleaned the place, but she was not happy. Again, she had to clean. She was not happy. She had to clean until and unless she didn't find even a drop there. But again, she was not satisfied with it. She brought the chowki back again. And again, she started wiping. Then I was wondering, standing there, looking at it, whether is this really the perfection, or are we, is this somewhere in between an obsession or a perfection? So that's a thin line which was drawn actually. So I just wanted to bring that back.
That's right.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's very good actually. So two things I will come. So first I will go to the first thing, what just now he explained. So then I'll come and tell yours, Brinda. So what you said is correct, sir. Like, you used the word repetitive. Yeah, and you spoke about, like, being fixated and you know, their mind cannot think about anything else. Those are exactly correct. Okay. So if you open that obsessive compulsive disorder slide, Brinda.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Next one. Okay. So I'll explain this, Brinda, and then I'll come and explain your question.
Sure.
Okay. So right. Okay. What is obsessive compulsive disorder? Is this right? Exactly what you said. It's a recurrent one, repetitive one, very unpleasant. Key thing to remember is that it is unpleasant, guys. It's not pleasant. Okay. What is it? Is this okay? So the patient, they get fixated, they get obsessed with a particular thought or a particular idea or a particular act or a particular image. See, it could be anything, not just washing hand or things like that. So that is what commonly we see, but it could be happening inside their brain. They could have a fixated idea, some particular thought that keep coming to their mind, you know, again and again, and they cannot get rid of the thought. And the thought is very distressing. That they you know, that particular thought or image or idea is very distressing, and they do not want it, but they cannot stop it. Okay, so it is very distressing, and the child often tries to resist it. You know, I do not want it. I have to control this. I can do it, but they are usually unsuccessful, right? And this is present for at least 2 weeks to have a clear-cut diagnosis. 2 weeks, right? And what are these thoughts? What are these images? So they originate in their own mind. They're not something externally. Somebody is putting thoughts in their head. So when that aspect comes, you talk about psychotic disorder. That is different. So this is their own thought. It is coming from their own mind. They know that. It is very repetitive. It keeps coming again and again, all the time. When they are eating, when they are watching a movie, when they are studying, when they are doing something, it doesn't go away. They cannot get rid of it. It is there all the time. Yeah. And, you know, not just thought or image, to whatever they feel, they do some act, compulsive act. That is what he mentioned just now, that like, you know, a compulsive act. It could be an act of cleanliness, washing hands, because they think that like, you know, there is germs, they get infected with germs. They go wash hands repeatedly, wash. You know, if you see their hand, it will be like, you know, completely damaged, bleeding. And checking doors repeatedly, whether it is locked, and things like that. So they cannot come out of that place. They keep checking it again and again, and they cannot focus or do anything else. So these are repetitive, and they are very unpleasant, and they are compulsive act. They have to do it. And most important, it is not pleasurable. It is very distressing. So this is what obsessive compulsive disorder means. Now, the difference, Brinda. So OCD is different from being perfectionist is different, right? So some children, that perfectionism is inborn. Some personality is inborn. Okay, so they can be perfect. But one particular example, what you said is that like, you know, the child was cleaning and not happy with the cleaning, you know, we need to explore further, and we need to see whether that's only one act, whether the child doing it, or whether the child is being obsessed with that, you know, it's been doing that repeatedly. So in that case, we need to explore it. But very, very young child, you need to look into the age of the child. Example, 2 or 3 year old, it's very difficult. It will
exactly.
not, yeah, you cannot diagnose it, and it's very difficult. You cannot just name a child, you know, and say that like, you know, the child is having OCD. It has a huge impact on not only for the child, but for its future as well as for the family. So we need to be exactly. Very careful. So see, there is a fine line. It could be a perfectionism, yeah, or it could be OCD. But to make a diagnosis of OCD, please wait and watch. Let the child go to the school, yeah, do detailed assessment. Yeah, we have to see whether these symptoms disappear or whether they are coming back again. So we need to do further detailed examination, observation for the child. Teachers play a key role in that. Until then, we cannot name it. Again, it could be perfectionism, like inborn personality traits. So we all are inborn, like, you know, we could be anxious by birth, anxious person, or we could be like, you know, perfectionist by birth. Those things comes inborn. So it could be a perfectionism as well. So those are, it's very difficult for a child to diagnose. But what I would advise is that wait until the child is able to express itself. Yeah,
exactly.
So when the child is able to talk, the child will give you more history. And until then, we have to wait and watch.
Right.
So,
That's what we actually did there, because we saw that pattern in many other things as well. So while during doing the inset, the child used to do it. And if she's not satisfied, she used to rub everything starting from the beginning and start doing it. So it was a very thin line, and we couldn't, understand whether it is this side or that side, because the age is very small. So we really had to wait.
Age is a factor.
Correct.
So
The age, the child is very small, and we, I really, when I'm continuously observing her, I find that, a little above than what a normal perfection can be. There is a thin line. After so many years of experience, we know where the child's perfection, lies. Of course, it's inbuilt, and of course, every single child varies. But when you go overboard, then we try to analyze, okay, what is this? Is this really a perfection that the child is wanting, or is this something else? So, being to that profession, we keep thinking in the other order also of that fact.
So,
and we kept holding back. As you said, I think probably we have to wait for another few more years to understand where the child is. So that might help constant observation.
Observation has to be continued.
Correct. That's what constant observation and continuous observation might help. Let's hope for the best.
So the perfectionism comes it is inborn. Even like how old is Arjun? Is now 3. My son, I used to see him. He has this habit when he takes something from a particular place, whatever it is a cup or a TV remote or whatever it is. When he plays, he goes back and put it at the right place. So this was not taught by me. So he has that thing. He when he takes something, he finishes it. If he cannot complete it, he cannot focus on the other activity.
Other one.
So it's not something I taught him, but I just found him okay, this is something coming inborn. That perfectionism comes inborn. So
exactly. That's what we call it as human tendency as such, giving it a different terminology in our words. We call it as human tendency to perfect. So that's there within everyone. For some, it manifests more. For some, it manifests less. That's it. But it's there in everyone. Yeah.
That's right. So these are personality disorders. There are different personality: anxious personality, borderline personality, antisocial personality, histrionic. So it goes like different personalities. So those are again another different topic. So personality disorders are more common in adolescence. So I did not cover that here in early childhood.
No issues.
This is what OCD is, right? So the school age children are able to express, guys. So below age 6, it's really hard. Don't come into any conclusion or diagnosis. Just observe the child and wait for the right time to explore. And with a proper mental health help, you can come out with more answers. Yeah, right. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. Yeah, again, more common thing. Next slide, ADHD. Right, okay. So this is also very common, right? ADHD. So most parents, they cannot handle their active child. So they cannot handle, they think it is ADHD. Is it ADHD? And they bring for ADHD assessment. Does that happen, Brinda?
You ask me, I'll tell you stories about that. People keep coming in and telling it's an opposite of this. Okay, my child is very hyperactive. That's how they introduce the child to us in the first go. Now, please never tell that the hyperactive child. Don't just ever bring that word called hyperactive in a normal life. So just that your child is an active child. Every child is active there. Right? And they tend to think that the child is hyperactive and bring that as a big flowery word over there and say, my child is hyperactive. He cannot sit in a
That's what,
and then I have to send you somewhere else if you're going to tell me that again and again.
Okay, see, this is very, very common, ADHD.
Yes.
Somewhere the parents assume, many assume that, the child has ADHD or whether it is ADHD. See, as I said, children are inquisitive scientists. They explore. They are here to explore and live their own life in this world, right? Some child won't be active. Every child is different. So do not use the word hyperactivity just commonly. Use the word active. Your child is active, which is well and good. Happy thing to do. So what is ADHD? Is this? See, look at that word, ADHD. attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So not just hyperactivity, it is attention. So the child could be inattentive. So what is inattention is that they cannot give close attention to anything. So they are, for a lecture in a class, they cannot be attentive, they cannot focus on it, or they will be unable to complete their school work, or even inattentive to what is being said around them. So they suffer academically. So inattention is one. Number two is hyperactive. So this is very important. So what is this hyperactivity is that, see, this is different from being active is different from being hyperactive. So what happens in hyperactivity is that, so the child will be like, restless, unable to sit at one place, runs around, climbs excessively, which is sort of inappropriate. And this pattern is persistent. You find their motor activity is quite excessive, right? Which is like different from being active. So being active, a child jumping around, running around is normal. So being hyperactive is different. The child cannot sit at one place, cannot even focus and do any activity. So they will be very restless that they just run around, and you see the child is not able to focus or do anything because of that hyperactivity. And number three is impulsivity. So what is impulsivity is this? They do not know the danger and they go and approach things. Example, if a 6-year-old can hold the parent's hand and can cross the road or can cross it by itself. But in ADHD, what happens is that even when a traffic is approaching, they go and cross it. So they are very impulsive. Means like, they cannot wait. They even before you ask a question, they give an answer. Or even if you finish, before you could finish completing a sentence, they will speak up. So they talk excessively, and they don't worry about danger. You know that for a 6-year-old child to do something, the child should be aware of touching a fire is not good. But ADHD, they are very impulsive. They don't think about the danger. They cannot calculate that. So they go and act before anything could happen. They go and do the act. They cross the road. They run away. So it is very, very, very hard for the parents. So this key thing, inattention, hyperactivity, not being active, hyperactivity, impulsivity, being impulsive, to everything, to whatever the question you ask, they cannot they cannot wait for you to even complete the question. They speak out, they talk a lot, and also they act without realizing the danger, what would happen, what would be the outcome. So all this combines as ADHD. So age of onset is before 7. Remember that, right? Okay. So ADHD. Okay, we have to rush. Okay, guys, I'll finish up quickly.
Just a minute. We are ahead, it's already 3:30, but Deepa, let's continue with this today. So there is a recording. If just that anyone cannot stay back and quit the meeting. So anyways, the session is recorded. I will be sharing the session with you, but Deepa, I would request you to continue with the session. So there are a few more slides alone. So let's continue and finish this off for the day.
Finish this off, guys. Sorry,
yeah. So I have a question here, Deepa. Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
So Deepa, whenever I find a child with these kind of symptoms, here at Chennai, there is a doctor called Dr. Jayanti in Nandanam, one of the very famous neuropsychiatrists over here. So pediatric neuropsychiatrist. Whenever I send the child there along with the parent, there is always a report saying back that unusual watching of TV, the television has to be cut down. Actually, I had always wondered how much of this is true, whether really the television watching or the screen time, how much does it trigger ADHD or autism in that case?
See, it's not an exact reason that it is a reason for ADHD. ADHD biological cause is different, Brinda. Okay, it is biological. So ADHD is not something which which happens because of external factors like watching TV or anything like that. Again, watching TV and being too much into the television, everything give rise to other components like conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, which is coming back in the upcoming slides, right? Okay, but ADHD is different. ADHD is sort of, it happens biologically. There are reasons proven, like, smoking in pregnancy is associated with ADHD.
Right. And
right.
parental
Okay. So
fights.
Yes,
all the mental health of mom does affect. So that is what I also believed, until and unless whenever we see the reports, TV is one of the the screen time, kindly asking the parent to cut down on screen time is one of the biggest concern that comes up.
The screen time makes a child aggressive. The screen time makes a child aggressive, and there is change in child's behavior. So all this conduct disorder, oppositional deviant disorder happens because of that. Okay, but ADHD not related to watching TV. No.
Okay. Right.
ADHD is biological. It is inborn, genetical. Okay, it is not related to external factors at all. This ADHD, if not treated, it will give rise to antisocial personality disorder in adolescence if not treated. Right? Okay, so ADHD could worsen and could present as conduct disorder. So, and again, I'll tell you what conduct disorder is and antisocial personality disorder, but ADHD is not related to watching TV, no.
Right. So that was one of the things which I really wanted to know. Whenever we send a child to, a psychological session, the first thing that comes out is this one. So that is the feedback from the, feedback or probably.
In a way, this is true. Like, watching too much TV time, screen time impacts child's mental health. It makes a child aggressive, which is proven. It makes a child aggressive. There is change in child behavior, which is proven, actually, but not ADHD related to watching TV, no.
Okay. Right. Okay. I am going for the next slide.
All right, Brenda. Okay, guys, this is OPD, okay? Oppositional defiant disorder. So what is this? Is like, the parents come and say, my child is very annoying. He's getting angry, quite aggressive. Aggressive in the sense like, verbally aggressive, not physically attacking. So quite annoying child, quite angry, not listening to me, not following my rules. So this is what happens. So this is related to what Brenda you said, watching too much screen time, and more it is oppositional deviant behavior is related to family, actually, being distorted family. Difficult parents, not providing enough attention to the child, or neglected child, parents not spending enough time with the child. So there will be change in child's behavior. So main thing to remember is this, like, any child presenting with behavior difficulties, getting angry, not complying with whatever the parents say, not complying with the rules, what's been put forward. It's not the mistake just on the child. If a child is quite aggressive, look back the family, look around what sort of environment the child is living in. So that is what OPD is, okay? So OPD, one thing to remember, OPD is that there is no serious violation of social norms or the rights of others, like which happens in next slide, if you could go on, conduct disorder.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So conduct disorder evolves over time. There is aggression, violation of the rights of others. And what is this? Is this conduct in disorder? They don't follow any social norms. They go and attack people. They steal things, and they don't comply with any rules. They are quite aggressive, both physical aggression, verbal aggression. Everything happens. So they don't follow any rules, and there is also violation of the rights of other people. So they go and interfere, they cross boundaries. So this is what conduct disorder. Both OPD and conduct disorder happens because of harsh parenting, distorted family, lack of proper parental supervision, mom and dad not living together, separated, or child being abused, and not being loved, living with a step parent, etc. So all this are behavior difficulties. So all this happens because you need to look into the family background, both OPD and conduct disorder. It is not just a child will present with symptoms without without having a, like, without background, parents being aggressive and not providing enough attention to the child. So that is the main thing to remember. Yeah. So next slide, Brinda. So psychotic disorder. So psychotic disorder is quite rare, guys. So the onset of schizophrenia, other psychotic disorder, age of onset as early you could see is 11 and 12 years, right? So I will give a quick information. What happens is that, see, the child usually presents being withdrawn, and they cannot think, cannot think. When they speak, when I speak or when we all speak, we are able to form a proper sentence. But before making a sentence, there will be this automatic thought and then words come. So what happens is that, like, they will go through this thought blocking, and their thoughts are disordered, cluttered. So when they speak, there is no proper speech. You find them, not being able to make a proper sentence. So they present also with a fixed firm belief, a false belief about, like, something like particular person is after them, trying to kill them, or the food is being poisoned. Not just that, also hallucinations, perceptual disturbances, like they used to hear voices, like people talking to them. So the child will be distracted, or listening to somebody. When you talk to the child will not give you eye contact. Child will be looking around on the sideways because somebody is talking to them. So this is called hallucination, auditory hallucinations. And then you have visual hallucinations, where they see unusual things, what we people don't see. So all these delusion, presenting with thought disorder, hallucination, or the component of psychotic disorder, commonly you see is the schizophrenia, which age of onset is 12. So it is quite rare, but just to have that knowledge that, like, these symptoms, like, child could be withdrawn, distracted, unable to make a proper sentence, thought blocking. When they are speaking, all of a sudden they stop and then they start again. So all these things to remember for a psychotic disorder, right?
Okay. Deepa, one more question here. So what if a child is having an imaginary friend? Where does that stand in the sense, not always, the imaginary friends are common, playing with, storytelling, mimicking is all common. But I'm talking about imaginary friends, as if acting as if some person is right over in front of them and talking to them, narrating stories to that person. When it goes overboard, where does that stand actually?
See, it's common for them to imagine. Okay, that is what we differentiate with the autistic child cannot do. Yeah, so this is normal thing for them to imagine a character and talk and do a pretend play. What abnormality you need to notice is this, right? Okay, whether the child actually believes that there is somebody out there, and and the child is actually talking to that person, not related to playing. Playing is different. Keep that aside, okay? But other than that, imagining a person, which is something related to their mind, actually. So how can I explain? See, for psychotic disorders, the child has this fixed firm belief, false belief, not a real one, false belief. Which is not related to imagination. Imagination is different. We all imagine, we all dream. So imagining, dreaming are normality or normal. Okay, that is different, right? Okay, psychotic disorder is different. It is, how can I explain? It is like, they have this fixed belief about something which is not real, which is false, right? And it is not pleasant. It is quite distressing for the child. So the child cannot be normal with that. And when they think, imagine, and play, the child is happy, right, Brinda? The child is happy, right? So the child is not distressed.
There is an example that has happened with us, Deepa, so which we had been worrying for a very long time. Unfortunately, the child is not there with us this year. But then, we keep on observing every single child. So many of the times this child goes outside the play area. I mean, she wanders around in this aside place where they do craft works and other things. So there is no other child along with this one. She's almost 4.5 years. Okay. And she starts seeing a wall and starts talking. The child starts talking. And it was not once or twice that we had observed. And she reads story. The story, it's an imaginative story. The book is there, though the child doesn't know how to read, she tells a story as if thinking there is someone else there in the opposite side. So when we go and ask, yaru illiye appadinu mattu correct ah da solluva. Anga yaru illiye, and then the minute we pass, are you listening to my story? Appadinu kettu thirumbi aarambikkum andha kolanda. So we had all this 4.5. We had sent her to some psychological analysis as well. As you said, parental problems were there. They both were not together. So there were a lot of other things.
I don't think, Brinda, this is a psychotic disorder. Definitely not. Yeah. At that age, right? At that age, it's not possible. So it could be other thing, you know. It could be related to other psychological factors, as you said, disturbed family, where the child is sort of, you know, looking for a comfort, or looking an object as a parent or as somebody, so the child could rely upon. So on that aspect, the child is looking into the wall and you know, talking, because the child doesn't have anybody to talk to, right? The child is not given proper love and care, proper attention. So the child has no option. So it cannot trust people. So it cannot talk to people. So it wants to express, the child wants to express itself. So it's just talking.
Okay. So I was not literally meaning to the psychotic disorder that was right here in the front of the screen. I just wanted to know where the child is, so that we can help the child, right? You know?
Yeah. So,
there is some kind of problem. When we went through the digging of entire family history, we understood that, yeah, there's a lot of parental disturbance as well as the grandparental disturbance over there, which was hindering the child's growth.
Yeah,
and to understand how we could help her, we couldn't do it without a proper psychological analysis of the child. See, from our perspective, we see something is different, but we are not doctors to tell what is different there. I know there is some problem. I know some issues are there, but how do we address it is a big issue. Always.
No, it's not easy, Brinda. It's not easy. You know, teachers cannot do everything.
Correct.
Because you don't have you cannot take any, you know, responsibility or things in your hand. All we could give is from teacher's point. Yes, you could give that feedback, right? You know, this is something serious. This is something is going on, and you know, inviting the right people, the family, and expanding the family. Again, you know, when you think that, like, you know, the family is the issue, then comes the social service. We have to go into that angle. So we could travel only up until that point, but it is clearly this child is this child is disturbed. You know, this child is disturbed, clearly disturbed, and it's not being looked after well, and the child is being neglected, and the poor child is, you know, talking to the wall because the child is looking for somebody to talk to.
Exactly. With single parent, many single parent children, we face this issue.
Many of them. Exactly. You know, that's what I put up one slide just for educating the parents. It will come up how important it is having a mother, father for a child
together.
You know? Yeah, together. It's so important. Yeah,
it's very important. So, I agree to that. Moving on to the next slide.
Next one, Brinda. Okay, causes. Okay, see, causes, I cannot write everything, but I covered up it. See, always remember, mental health causes could be biological. Brinda, just you said ADHD, biological. Okay, so again, what biological? Depression, bipolar illness, they all happen because of dysregulation in hormones. Depression, we call it as, like, you know, hormone like sertraline or epinephrine. Those are biological terms, but generally I'm telling, like, there is biological cause for mental health issues like depression, bipolar, ADHD, anxiety as well. So remember that, and also genetic components. So it runs in family. So ADHD, bipolar, depression, even schizophrenia, psychotic disorder, they come in family. So the causes could biological and genetic. So this is something what is happening in the nature. Now, most important is that psychosocial factor. So once a child is born, it's all about the environment, the psychosocial factor. Role of parents, role of society plays a key role in development of the child. So psychosocial factor is so important. Stressful life events. Losing a parent before age 11 causes a global impact in the psychosocial development. So it's the biggest trauma for the child. Any abuses, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, or any abuses for a child, neglecting the child, ignoring the child, not providing the love and care, the proper attention to the child, just avoiding the child, neglecting the child, they all play a key role in mental health issues. So the genetic factor, I've just mentioned all the studies, they've proven studies which shows that, mental health disorders like bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, they've done various studies like adoption, twin study, linkage, chromosomal studies. They all proven that there is a genetic component for the mental health issues. So from your side, from parents' side, from audience side, remember the psychosocial factor. Provide a healthy environment for the child, which is very, very important. You don't have to take all this textbook messages, what has been put up. I put up for the slide, but remember that psychosocial factor provide a comfortable environment, pleasant environment for the child to grow. Okay. So next slide, Brinda.
Yeah, treatment.
So next slide. Treatment options. Okay, so there are psychotherapy as well as pharmacotherapy, right? Psychotherapy is what the therapy you commonly come across. So depression, mild to moderate depression, first line is that psychotherapy. So what you do is that cognitive behavior therapy, where you sit with a child, the therapist sit with a child, and they talk about child cognition, their thoughts, and they try to modify the thoughts. So this is what cognitive behavior therapy. Usually the cognitive behavior therapy, they do it for, it's a short therapy for 3 months time. So cognitive behavior therapy is where the child thinking ability, what the thought the child has, they try to change the thought. So this is what cognition means thought. Cognitive behavior therapy, they train their thinking process. So this is not happening in one day. It happens for 3 months time minimum. Next, you also have this called psychodynamic psychotherapy, where you sit with a patient for 1 year, every week, fixed time, and you talk to the patient, and you try to challenge their thinking. So psychodynamic psychotherapy is useful for depression and personality disorders. So other than that, you also have group therapy, family therapy. Example what Brinda said with that particular child. So we need to focus on giving not just individual therapy for the child. Along with the individual therapy, what is so important is the family therapy. Inviting the family, educating the family, teaching the family, and how to behave with the child, and also looking into the family distortion and doing maximum help from our side. And this family therapy is also key role in conduct disorder as well as ADHD, oppositional deviant disorder. So example, ADHD is so difficult for the parents to look after a child. We have to think about parents' mental health as well. Having a hyperactive child, all the time, the child being impulsive, not doing well academically, is too much pressure for the parents. Their mental health is also should be focused. So family therapy, we do that for ADHD, and family therapy for conduct disorder and OPD. So next comes the medication. So medication is straightforward. You see a psychiatrist and they prescribe you. So depression, you have antidepressants, and also for anxiety, you got medication. So, and then for psychotic disorder, you got medication. Again, obsessional compulsive disorder, OCD, you got not just medication. OCD, mild to moderate OCD, they primary thing is that therapy. So they give cognitive behavior therapy for the OCD. So OCD first therapy, and then you also give antidepressant as well as antipsychotic to suppress those thoughts. So that's overall the pharmacotherapy. So next slide, Brinda. So this is what important for the parents, okay? See, remember guys, family factors play a key role in mental health, okay? So what is this normal family? See, the expected cultural norm is this: living under same roof, mother and father, having a good harmonious interaction with both parents and children, interacting well, being very happy, pleasant is what is expected cultural norm. Any deviation from this normalcy, what is that? divorced parent, single parent. So there are some unfortunate situations where they lose a parent due to accident or trauma, anything else, some natural causes. They losing a parent, that is different. But other factors like the child witnessing the trauma, parents, both parents fighting, divorced, single parent, and neglecting the child, or parents abusing the child, or both parents like abusing themselves, each other. So witnessing all this, what happens is this, okay? The child will have low self-esteem, will not be a confident child. Yeah, the child will be very vulnerable. So the child will have all these mental health disorders like depression. The child will be prone to have conduct disorder, OPD, and antisocial personality disorders. So this is why the family is so important. Providing a healthy environment to the child is the key. So as parents, though you don't remember whatever slides I put up, okay, just remember this one message, please. Yeah, make the child happy. Be with the child, listen to the child, address the child needs, and both mother and father remember that, like how you going to behave will decide how the child is going to be rest of the life. Yeah. So the final take-home message is that, Brinda, if you could take, yeah.
I have put that on.
Okay. Okay, guys, take this. Remember this. Okay. Child mental health is important. Okay. Do not neglect that. Just like physical health. So the person who gave a very good reply at the start of, sorry, sir, I'm not sure whether you're still there. I don't know your name. I think maybe he left.
He is there, I think. You can carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so he gave a very good reply, actually. He said it's like physical health, mental health is also important. You cannot neglect it. So that's what I'm saying. Child mental health is crucial. And remember that slide which I showed you, conventional stages, 0 to 6 years. Yeah, so 0 to 6 years is crucial. Okay, so parents play a key role for a child. Okay, and remember that children are in a great hurry to grow up. They wanted to be, the child goal in life is to be a successful child, not successful in the sense, not academically, okay, mental health wise, stronger individual, okay, and children, learn how to get along in the world outside home. Because, see, do all that you can to the child, provide a healthy environment, love and affection, and this is what will make the child, how the child is going to be outside home. But the child majority life is outside home. They go to school, then college, then they live their own life. Okay, so crucial early stages, you provide a healthy environment. Yeah, and the child role is to be a child, successful child, strong child with a strong mental health. Okay, and remember that children are not putty in their parents' hand. So they are not clay that you can mold them as per your wish into different shapes. No, they are not that. And they did not come to this world to be like their mother, father, or to be like somebody. They are discrete individuals who come here to live their own life. Yeah. So your job is to provide them a healthy environment, love, and affection. Right. So that's it, guys. So
Great.
sorry, it's 1.5 hours lecture. So see, I did not cover autism and learning disability because it's a huge area. And yeah, so that has to be a different, and personality disorder that I did not cover. Again, that is a different aspect. So I couldn't cover those because no time for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Deepa. Is there any other questions?
Some audience left, actually.
Definitely. Is there anyone? Is there any question that you would like to ask the other people who are there as an audience? So, is there any question that you would like to ask?
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You were talking about ADHD for a child, where we can identify if she's not able to, understand instructions or tell, like, make them do without diverting, just concentrate on a simple job. Does ADHD even come to the siblings, or is it because of just when that baby is been born, it comes to that only one.
It is genetic, sir. It could occur in siblings as well. So there is 1 in 3 chances. Yeah. So it is not just both ADHD and autism. It is genetic component. So it could occur in siblings as well. So just keep an eye. Yeah. But important thing is treating ADHD is important. Yeah. So you see, so there is this detailed assessment they do. They call it as a Corners questionnaire. So where a primary caregiver, child parent, one of the parent, and school teacher, they fill in that form. So where a series of questions, so many questions we ask. So the teachers fill in that for the child, and one template is for the teachers to fill in. The other one is for the parents to fill in. And they assess the child separately with another template. So they come into conclusion. So you cannot just like that, okay, inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, ADHD. No, it's not a straightforward, not like that. So we cannot name a child like that. So it is a very detailed assessment, goes for quite few sessions. And then you come to a conclusion that yes, it is ADHD. So what you do now is that, yeah, there are medications available for ADHD. And so we start with the medication and also family therapy, and it is genetic, so it could occur in siblings.
No, just correct me if I'm wrong. Does the way like when I was raised in a very open house. Like we have a lot of space around the house. So when we were kids, we play on the ground like all the time. But now since we are here in a city where it's very restricted for the kids to go and not safe also. Does it also play a role on the kid where it may show, where the kid can show a sign of aggressiveness, not able to go out enough or play out in the greens enough? It may be a reason or not?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. You know, like Western, I live in UK. Here it's like, you know, you don't see like India, like people don't come out and you know, talk that socially, you know, like most of the time we be at home. So we take our child, and it's only me, my husband, my child, and we take the child out. And, you know, like it's not necessarily that, no, because different, like, you know, geographically people live in different areas, right? And not everybody experience that symptoms. No, it's not related to that. So the primary thing is that, like, you know, having a healthy environment for the child is important.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah.
It's basically about the way in which we approach the kid. So just to understand that. The kid is 4.5 years old, and generally he wants to participate in everything that we as parents do. For example, making tea or making milk or anything like that. So we used to keep him together, and then we work with him and all those things. But one day what happened apparently was he was, he had a bowel movement, so he had to move out. So we went ahead and made the tea, okay? And when he came back, he was so upset that he started crying. Eventually, we diverted him and then tried to bring back him to normalcy, and then we went ahead. But these kind of behaviors, is it an expected one? How do we handle this? Because we diverted him from that event. Is that the right?
Sorry, sir. You know, when you are talking, I lost that important bit. So the child, you said like you were involving the child, making tea, everything. And did you say the child went out? What did you say?
Yeah. The child had to go out because he had a bowel movement.
Okay.
So, and because it was already half cooked, so we had to finish that tea. And when he came out, he was kind of so upset that we went ahead and did it. He wanted to actually get participate in that. So like this, what happens is in many of the events, the kid, if it doesn't go according to his wishes, he gets upset and he starts crying, or
that is normal. So you know that it's not obsession. Okay, it's that the order the child has it. Even my 3-year-old does it. Okay, it's normal. Okay, it's not abnormal. Okay, so it is normal because see, it's a child. You know, the child has this things on a particular order to do. Yeah. So when that order gets disturbed, it's normal for the child to get disturbed, right? Okay, because the child, in child mind is to finish that activity, but yeah, child has to go to the toilet. So the child went and came. By the time that's been done, child cannot accept. It's a child,
Yeah.
it cannot accept.
But how do you handle this?
But that's normal, sir. That's normal. Okay, that as the child grows, the child will accept that things will not happen as per his or her wish. Yeah, the child will learn that slowly. Actually, it is normal. It is normal psychosocial development. This is normal, actually.
Okay, so
this is normal.
How do you handle such a situation when the kid is crying and you can't
acknowledge the child? Explain the child that since you went out, the tea will spill. We have to finish it off. That's why we did, and acknowledge the distress first. Okay, acknowledge the child. By that way you are listening to the child, and you are respecting the child's wishes. Yeah. So that the child will cry. Of course, the child will cry, but the child will get smoothened when you reassure the child. Yeah. Child will get smooth and then explain the child that like next time you can make the tea, or you can even tell the child that like we can make it again, evening or tomorrow you can make it again. And when you make it again, tell the child that see, yesterday you couldn't do it because you have to go to the toilet. So today we are doing it. We'll finish it off like that. So it's the consistency. Do you understand, sir, what I'm telling?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so when you next time the next day,
perfect, actually.
Something else. That's why we want.
Yeah, see, that's what. When next day when you explain, you go back to the previous day and tell, like this is what happened.
We also keep saying this actually, that when you have a child who wants to do it, then you can explain him in a very nice way that probably we couldn't catch up with you today. Tomorrow probably we can do it together, and this was the reason behind it. That's it.
Then but this is normal. The child
very normal. Yeah,
very normal. My child, my 3-year-old, I think like maybe Suganya ma'am, Divya ma'am would have observed that he has this habit, Arjun, no, Vrinda, like if he wants to do 2 activity, what he will do? He will wind up with the first activity, right? So he will take all the things and put it in the shelf, and I'll tell him, okay, do the next activity. He won't do. What he will do? He will roll the mat, put it back in the same place. And then next activity, he will go back again, take the mat, put it back. So that is his order. Okay, that is his order. We cannot do anything because I taught him like that. Once you finish your activity, roll the mat and put it back. So he's doing that, and so for the next activity again, he will take time. He will put the mat and then he will place things. So not only that, everything, that oil mat and that cloth, everything will go. He will dry it. And then everything will start from the beginning.
From the beginning. That's the order in the child. Actually, it works out very well when the child is at school because, after every activity, they give a break. They walk around the environment. Till then, their mat cannot be there. So obviously, they tend to put it back and bring it again, all from the beginning.
So this order is normal. Actually, it's very normal when the child is distressed and crying. It's a normal, healthy development for the child.
Correct.
So you don't have to worry.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir,
just to understand, today the world has become such that every set of parents want just one kid, because bearing with just one kid itself is a big deal. So going for the second, is it an important thing for the first kid? And what would be the right age?
Right. Okay. It's individual choices, right? Okay. So again, it's it depends on many factors. Okay, we cannot be judgmental and tell that you should have only 1 child, 2 child, or 3 child. It's difficult. So it's individual choice. Number one is individual choice. Depends upon the family situation. It's in the hands of parents, mom and dad, whether they want to go for another child or not. Yeah. And it's always nice to have a sibling. Again, it's individual choice, sir. Yeah. So because if somebody is thinking they can have only 1 child and provide all good, healthy environment for the child to grow, and they themselves are happy with their mental health. They are strong enough to bring the child their own choice, and rather than having another child just for some other pressure and society pressure or whatever it is, and then not providing the healthy environment. Do you get it, sir? So it's individual choices, right?
Exactly,
Okay,
but you're really, if I think if they're all well enough and there are people to take care, definitely going for a second one could be a better option. That too within 3 years of age, 3 to 4 years at the maximum, you can give an age gap. That's what I have felt so. With my daughter, I had faced a lot of issues. She's 11. There's no option for us for even thinking about a second one by now. But we see that excessive possessiveness and not even try to give to some other child, even of a very small age. Even if a 4-year-old is going to come and ask her, she has that saying no. But when the minute you go outside, the children behave in a different way. But I have personally realized that during this time, the children need that social emotional connection even at home with even if it's going to be a sibling rivalry, it's going to be for good. So that's something I really felt.
So age gap, 3 years should be okay.
3 years should be okay.
Yeah, 3 years should be okay, age gap. But other than that, well, it's up to the individuals. It's very important. Now, you bring a child to this world, and but you have to provide whatever the child
needs. Exactly. That's what, if everything situation
when
goes right.
When you can't do that,
there is no choice.
There is no. Why? You don't have to go for another child.
Great.
It's important. It's important that you give the society a child with a good mental health,
exactly.
who's not weak and who's able to face all the situations in life and move ahead. Yeah,
I agree.
If you are able to do that for another child, it's up to both the parents. Okay, decision of both the parents, right? Because they both contribute, for a child's development. Yeah, age gap, I can say it's like 3 years is good.
3 years is good. Okay. Any other questions? We are done for a lot. Yeah, thank you, Deepa. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brinda.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Wonderful
session.
Bye.
Bye.